My name is Naomi Beckett. I am 39 years old. And I want to tell you something that I have sat with for a long time before deciding to say out loud. The secret that came out in our family was not mine. It was not my husband's. It belonged to the generation above us. To the people who had built the family I had been trying to enter for 7 years. And when it came out, quietly, on a Tuesday afternoon, in the form of a DNA ancestry report that my mother-in-law had ordered for herself as a birthday gift, it did not just change what we knew. It changed the architecture of everything. Who had power? Who had history? Who had standing to say what they had been saying about me for 7 years? All of it shifted in one afternoon. If you are new here, please subscribe right now and drop your country and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you all the way back to where this started. I grew up in a small town in Mississippi. My father was a high school principal. My mother was a registered nurse. We were a close family, tight in the specific way of families who have learned that the world outside is not always going to be easy and have decided to make the inside as solid as possible. I was the middle of 3 children. Bookish, direct, the kind of person who takes a long time to trust people and then trusts them completely once she does. I met my husband Daniel at a graduate school orientation event in Nashville when I was 26. He was in the MBA program. I was in public health. We were at the same table at a welcome dinner and talked until the event staff asked us to leave because they needed to set up for the next morning. Daniel was from a family in eastern Tennessee. Old family in the specific way that means they had been in the same county for several generations and had developed, over that time, a strong sense of themselves as a unit with a particular identity. They were not wealthy in a flashy way. They were established. There is a difference. Established means the wealth is old enough to have become invisible, woven into the fabric of the community in ways that do not announce themselves but are felt in every room where decisions get made. Daniel had grown up at the center of that. He wore it lightly and without arrogance in the way of someone who has never needed to think about it. He was a genuinely good man. Warm, fair, the kind of person who apologized when he was wrong and meant it. His family was a different matter. His mother's name was Evelyn. His father was Robert. He had an older sister named Claire and a younger brother named Thomas. I met them 6 months into our relationship. A family gathering at the home place, the original family house that had been in the Beckett family for 4 generations and was treated with the specific reverence of a historic site. I prepared myself the way I always prepare for things that matter. I researched the family history. I knew the county, the family's community involvement, the names of extended relatives who might be present. I brought a gift I had chosen carefully. I wore something appropriate. None of it mattered. Not because I did anything wrong. Because I was not what Evelyn had in mind for her son. I understood this within 30 minutes of arriving. Not from anything she said directly. From the quality of her attention when Daniel introduced me. The specific way she looked at me, not unkind, not aggressive, just appraising in the way of someone doing a calculation they have already decided the outcome of. Evelyn was a woman who had a clear picture of who should belong to her family. The picture included certain things I had and certain things I did not. I had the education, the career path, the manner. I did not have the history. The county. The 4 generations of knowing the same families and attending the same churches and understanding the specific interior language of a community that has been talking to itself for a very long time. I was from Mississippi. I was from outside. And in Evelyn's internal accounting system that was a deficit that education and manner could not fully offset. The 7 years that followed were not dramatic. I want to be clear about that because I think people expect a story like this to involve open cruelty or obvious scenes of exclusion. It was not that. It was quieter than that. More precise. The specific exclusion of someone who has learned to make the outside of something look correct while the inside operates differently. Family gatherings were conversations about family history and family property and family decisions happened in rooms I was not invited into. Not locked out of. Just not thought of. The way you do not think of including someone who you have not fully registered as belonging. Comments about Daniel's childhood and his family's history delivered with the particular warmth of shared reference that is also a form of boundary. You can hear this story, but you cannot inhabit it the way we do. Evelyn's habit of referring to her grandchildren, our children, my children, primarily by their Beckett characteristics. He has his father's eyes. She has the Beckett temperament. As if the other half of their inheritance was decorative. Claire was warmer than her mother but took her cues from Evelyn in the specific way of a daughter who has never quite separated her own judgment from her mother's. Thomas was the most directly kind to me of any of them. We had real conversations. He asked about my work. He remembered things I told him. But even Thomas operated within the family's framework, and the framework did not fully include me. Daniel saw it. He named it clearly when I brought it up. He spoke to his mother about it on more than one occasion. I was not there for those conversations. Whatever he said resulted in slight modulations but not fundamental change. I made my peace with it in year 4. Not cheerfully, but practically. I decided that I could not change the architecture of a family that had been building itself for 4 generations. I could only decide how much of my energy to spend pressing against walls that were not going to move. I pulled back. Not from Daniel. From the effort of trying to be seen by people who had decided how they saw me. I invested in my own friendships, my own career, my own life with Daniel and our children that existed largely separately from the Beckett family narrative. It was not a perfect solution. But it was a sustainable one. And then Evelyn ordered a DNA ancestry test for her 72nd birthday. She had seen them advertised. Several of her friends had done them. She was interested in confirming what she already knew, the family history she had been the keeper of for 50 years. The county connections, the generational roots, the specific Tennessee lineage that was the foundation of everything the Beckett family understood itself to be. She ordered the kit in October. She submitted it in November. The results came back in December. Daniel called me on a Tuesday afternoon. He was at his parents' house. He had gone to help Robert with some winter maintenance and had stayed for lunch. He said, "Naomi, something has happened. I need you to come." His voice was a specific quality I had not heard from him before. Not panic. Something more complicated than panic. The quality of someone who has just understood that the ground they are standing on is a different shape than they believed. I drove the 40 minutes to his parents' house. When I arrived, the family was assembled in the living room. Evelyn and Robert. Claire and her husband. Thomas. Daniel. Evelyn was sitting in her usual chair. She looked diminished. Not physically. Structurally. The specific collapse of someone whose internal architecture has just been significantly revised. The DNA results had confirmed most of what she expected. The Tennessee lineage. The county connections. The generational roots going back to the 1800s. And one thing she had not expected. A half-sibling match. Someone she had not known existed. A woman in her mid-60s living in North Carolina whose DNA shared enough markers with Evelyn's to indicate a common parent. Evelyn's father, the patriarch of the family story she had been telling for 50 years, had had a child with another woman. Before his marriage to Evelyn's mother. A child he had never disclosed. A child who had grown up in North Carolina without knowing her father's identity and had submitted her own DNA to the same ancestry service looking for information about her biological history. The women had been matched by the algorithm. They had been in contact for 48 hours. I sat in that living room and I listened as the family processed what had happened. Claire was upset in the specific way of someone whose family story has been complicated without her permission. Thomas was quieter. Robert sat beside Evelyn with his hand on hers, saying very little. Daniel was watching me. I understood why. The woman who had appeared in the DNA results, Evelyn's half-sister, was African American. Her mother had been a young woman from a neighboring county. Her father had been Evelyn's father, a man who had been a prominent member of his community and who had been understood, for 50 years after his death, in a particular way that this information revised significantly. The Beckett family history, the narrative of 4 generations in that county, the community standing, the specific identity that Evelyn had built her understanding of herself around, had a chapter in it that had never been told. And the woman who had been treated as an outsider in that family for 7 years because she came from Mississippi instead of Eastern Tennessee was sitting in the living room when the chapter was revealed. I did not say anything for a long time. Then Evelyn looked at me. It was the most direct she had ever looked at me. Not appraising. Not calculating. Just direct. Woman to woman. She said, "I owe you an apology, Naomi." The room was very quiet. "Not just for today," she said. "For 7 years." I held her gaze. "What I have learned today," she said slowly, "is that the story I thought I knew, the one I have been the keeper of, was not complete. And I have been making judgments based on an incomplete story for a very long time." She paused. "Including judgments about you." I thought about 7 years of family gatherings. Of rooms I had not been invited into. Of conversations about family history delivered with the warmth of reference that was also a form of boundary. Of my children's Beckett characteristics named and my own contribution made invisible. I thought about all of it. Then I said, "Evelyn, I appreciate you saying that. I want to say something in return." She waited. "The woman you found today, your father's daughter, she has lived her whole life without knowing where she came from. Without the family story. Without the county connections. Without any of the things you built your identity around." I paused. She turned out fine. People do, when they have to. Evelyn looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes. I am beginning to understand that." The months that followed were complicated in the way that real things are complicated. Evelyn reached out to her half-sister. Carefully. With the help of a family therapist, which was something I had quietly suggested to Daniel and which he had suggested to his mother with more tact than I could have managed. The half-sister's name was Gloria. She was 66 years old. She was a retired teacher. She had 3 children and 7 grandchildren and a life that was full and complete and had been full and complete without the Beckett family story for 66 years. She agreed to meet. Cautiously. With her own boundaries intact. I was not at that first meeting. It was not mine to attend. But Daniel told me about it afterward. He said Gloria had come into the room with the particular composure of someone who has been their own foundation for a long time and does not need anything from this meeting to be okay. He said it reminded him of me. The relationship between Gloria and Evelyn is still in its early stages. These things take time. Gloria has no obligation to provide Evelyn with the warmth of family connection. She has spent 66 years without it and has built something solid on her own terms. If there is a relationship to be built, it will be built on Gloria's timeline and Evelyn's willingness to accept whatever form it takes. My relationship with Evelyn is different now. Not transformed. Not suddenly warm in a way it was never warm before. But honest in a way it was not honest before. She calls me now. Not always. But sometimes. Real calls. She asks about my work, my actual work, the public health research I have been doing for 9 years, with questions that show she has been paying attention. She said something to me 3 months after the DNA results that I have thought about many times since. She said, "I spent 50 years believing I knew exactly who we were. Exactly where we came from. And I let that certainty make me smaller than I should have been. smaller in how I saw other people. I said, most of us are working with an incomplete story, Evelyn. The question is what we do when we find out. She was quiet for a moment. You are generous, she said. More than I deserve. You are trying, I said. That is what I need from you. She has been trying. So have I. Daniel and I have been married for 13 years now. Our children are 9 and 6. They know their grandmother. They know their father's family and the county and the house that has been in the family for 4 generations. They also know Gloria. We have visited twice. Our daughter, who is 9 and observes everything, said to me on the drive home from the second visit, Mom, is Gloria Grandma Evelyn's sister? Yes, I said. Why didn't they know each other before? Because some stories take a long time to come out, I said. She thought about that for a moment. Then she said, Is the story out now? Most of it, I said. The rest will come. She nodded. Satisfied. She looked out the window at the passing Tennessee landscape. Good, she said. Stories should come out. She is 9 years old and she is right. Stories should come out. All of them. Even the ones that are uncomfortable. Even the ones that revise what we thought we knew. Even the ones that require us to look at the judgments we have been making based on incomplete information and ask ourselves what we would have done differently if we had known. I have asked myself that question about my own judgments too. I want to be honest about that. There are ways I pulled back from that family, ways I stopped trying, stopped extending myself, stopped choosing to be generous, that I would revisit if I could. The difference is I was responding to a closed door. Evelyn was keeping one. There is a difference. And the difference matters. But we are both, now, trying to walk through the same door from opposite sides. That is something. It is, I think, enough to build on. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been judged by someone working with an incomplete story? Have you ever sat in a room and felt the weight of a decision that had been made about you before all the facts were known? And have you ever watched someone discover that the story they thought they knew had a chapter they had never read? Drop the word chapter in the comments if this story reached something real in you. And if you are new here, subscribe. Every single day I share a new story about family, about truth, and about the moments when everything we thought we knew gets revised. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's Dark Truth.